Moms and dads, is your child's anxiety holding them back? Is it preventing them from experiencing their best life? As parents, we want nothing more than for our children to be happy, healthy, and above all, as they're getting into school and new social situations, calm and confident. But the reality is that even before all the lockdowns from the previous couple years, and on top of that, all of the restrictions put on our kids, there was already a mental health crisis brewing within the children and teens of the United States. It's been brewing in schools, and it's been bleeding out into families. And then for teens, once you throw all those lockdowns and restrictions on of the past couple years, it pretty much doubled. If you go by official CDC data, 10% of teens are struggling with anxiety right now. But other studies and other reports show that that number is much higher. And that's seen in the day to day as well. In our practice, we see more and more kids struggling with anxiety. And this was something that we used to see in college age kids and high school kids, late teens that transition from middle school into high school. But the thing is it's creeping earlier and earlier. We're now seeing it with elementary school kids coming in with a diagnosis of OCD, a diagnosis of anxiety, a diagnosis of ADHD, coming in kindergarten and younger kids as well. Slap on top of those anxiety issues, other sensory issues that we seem to see accompanying this, and it is a perfect storm of brewing to make a struggle for these kids to just get through a single day. Now, this goes far beyond attachment issues or parenting, and this is pointing to something deeper, and we're going to go into that today. First, we really have to dig in and address the root cause and the big question at hand here. What causes anxiety? Is it genetic? Is it a chemical imbalance? What effect do cell phones and social media and the fake lives that kids are following on there have to do with this as well? And even if those are factors, is there something deeper inside going on, adding to the stress and the toxicity of the environment for our kids, happening earlier and earlier in life, and creating a perfect storm of stress and anxiety that not only is cyclical in nature, but it gets stuck on and hardwired into the operations and the processes of how our kids function and view the world. So moms, dads, if you have a child that you know is struggling with anxiety, this is for you. This is to shed some light on the inner workings of how this system works, to give you some answers on what the next thing to do might be, and to give you guys a little bit of hope that there is something out there that is natural, it is drug-free, and it's not going to turn your child into a zombie to cure their anxiety or stress, but is going to look at the root cause and address it head on. And please follow along with me as we go through this process and share this if you know somebody else who is dealing with a similar situation. I'd like to share a quick story with you. At first glance, Emery was a star student. She was a great athlete. You could ask any of her coaches that she was dedicated, she was driven, she was focused, she excelled in the classroom, and overall, she did pretty darn good when looking at things, talking to her teachers or her coaches. Unfortunately, at home, things were a little bit different. Though she thrived in this stressful atmosphere of sports and school, when she was at home in a more calm and relaxed atmosphere, Emery's parents really struggled with getting her to complete her homework, to go to sleep on time, to get restful sleep, and even eating her dinner was a constant struggle. At home, Emery would have a hard time talking to her parents about having trouble sleeping, insomnia. She wouldn't have much of an appetite. She would just be kind of downtrodden all the time. And what started as downtrodden would eventually evolve into snippy and irritable. She had a hard time focusing and a hard time getting done the projects or the chores that her parents had assigned to her as part of the family to help out. It was almost described as a Jekyll and Hyde situation, where she would be one person during the day, rising up to the challenges and tasks, but when that burnt out, she turned into this completely different person that continued to struggle and struggle. When things like this happen, we start to turn the clock back and rewind and say, what happened here? How does she handle such a stressful situation in one area, but then in another area, she just completely comes apart at the seams? This was something that we had a deep conversation with Emery's parents about to get a better understanding of what was going on. For Emery, it was figuring out how much is too much And working with Emory's other providers, though it's not an official DSM diagnosis, the conclusion was made that she probably has high functioning anxiety. So, what is high functioning anxiety? Well, there's not a whole lot of research on the condition because, like I said, it's not actually an official diagnosis. Nevertheless, there are many other young adults and kids that are exhibiting a lot of the same circumstances and the behaviors that Emery was. What starts as a fuel and a passion that just burns a fire in someone eventually tends to smother and almost cripple them. Now, the signs are relatively similar along many different people. Essentially, the term high functioning anxiety describes a person who is experiencing these symptoms of anxiety while still getting all the things done that they need to do and functioning at a high level. To me, this is also why it's such a hard thing to figure out, because the child or the young adult does such a good job of masking what's going on inside. So, a quick summary of high functioning anxiety usually involves people who are high achievers despite this anxiety, and honestly, sometimes it may be because of it. But these individuals do succumb to the anxiety, and it does have a major effect on the way that they perceive their day to day. One glimmering ray of hope comes in the fact that people that struggle with high functioning anxiety do tend to notice this anxiety lessens significantly when their nervous system is functioning in the way that it is supposed to, when the stress and the tension are eliminated. These individuals have a high propensity for organization, neatness, attention to detail, and they often rely very heavily on a schedule and get heavily thrown off when that schedule is changed or disrupted. These individuals set very high personal standards for themselves. You may notice that your child may feel like they have to be perfect all the time, and it may be something that they just can't turn off, and if they fall behind or are not perfect, it has a drastic effect on them. They may also be very, very controlling of the situation or feel that they need to be in control of the situation, because if they can control it, they can harness it. So, what were some of the ways that we were able to get a better understanding of Emery's system and how to help take care of it? Well, first, we looked deep into the definition of anxiety itself. Anxiety is often described as a worry or a fear about the future, and this can manifest through thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and even physical sensations. That nervous stomach, that butterflies, that sick to the stomach feeling is very often reported. And here's the deal. It's okay to be nervous about things sometimes. You have a big game, a big test, a large event. But when that once in a while feeling becomes all the time, we start creeping away from nervousness or excitement, because biologically they are a very similar process within the body, into more of an anxiety type situation. These kiddos may experience nervousness, restlessness, increased heart rate, hard time concentrating, having a tough time sleeping, and gastrointestinal problems, again, getting back into that nervous stomach. We also see sensory and spectrum connections. Like most neurological conditions in kids, there are usually multiple tiers or challenges that all seem to be wrapped together. And this is why many kids with sensory processing disorder, autism spectrum disorder, and ADHD also have a secondary diagnosis of some sort of anxiety. Or it may have been the anxiety that led to the other diagnosis. Now, over the years, and especially in the last few, I have seen countless families that have children that are dealing with some sort of anxiety. And the thing is, it is caused by more than just genetics and chemical imbalances. Common things that we see that are increased in these situations are their all-around stress, their environmental toxins, especially during pregnancy. They may have a complicated labor, a complicated delivery. In an early childhood, they develop into this perfect storm, which is really just a good description of all of the things that continually stack on top of one another, and it becomes this vicious cycle that they just get stuck in. Like many neurodevelopmental disorders, one of the very common additional aspects we see that is often overlooked is the role that birth intervention and birth trauma plays in this symphony, where common and heavily used interventions like C-sections, forceps, vacuums, and inductions can trigger a sympathetic fight or flight response in both mom and baby coming out into the world for the first time. Over time, this sympathetic stress stuck on when we start with it It builds and it builds, and it just gets stuck in this system in this repetitive vicious cycle. It becomes far too easily activated, and kids stay far too overstimulated. We talk a lot about subluxation. We talk about dysautonomia. We talk about the vagus nerve pretty much all day, every day. And the connections there with anxiety are real. These neurological definitions of subluxation and dysautonomia, the interference with the normal function of the nervous system, and the result of that subluxation, meaning the autonomic nervous system not doing the job that it properly should be, both are factors of a nervous system being stuck in that sympathetic, stress stuck on, fight or flight, overdrive mode. But with that, it also means that the parasympathetic, the rest, relax, regulate part of the system is repressed. It's shut down, it's out to lunch, it's not doing the job that it needs to because that sympathetic system is just so overbearing on it, and the balance has been lost. It's important when we're talking about terms like this to be able to measure, and that's what we look at. We look at measuring these levels of dysautonomia and measuring the function of the vagus nerve to see how well they're doing their job, and also, very importantly, how well this interplay, this dance between the parasympathetic, rest, relax, regulate, and the sympathetic, stress on nervous system is working. We can look with our insight scans to tell how stressed out and stuck on that sympathetic part of the nervous system really is, to evaluate the balance between that parasympathetic and sympathetic system, and also look and track progress over time as we remove the interference, remove the irritation, remove the subluxation from this system, reduce the overall dysautonomia. And the things that you guys see in your kids are the changes that you're looking for from the get-go. I'm a very strong proponent that looking at things from a perspective of what is the most natural way to take care of something that doesn't involve throwing my kid on a medication or a stimulant drug. What is it? How can I do it? Let me at it. Because I tell you what, while medications are there and they are necessary in some cases, for me, that's not the first thing we're turning to. I would not want to put my child on a stimulant medication that the goal is to just rely on that medication until they don't need it anymore. Because I tell you what, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to change without doing anything about the system itself, I mean, that's crazy. We need to provide options for people and kids that are struggling with anxiety, that are struggling with this stress stuck on all the time, that feel that they have no reprieve and they just can't stop. We owe them more than to just cover up their symptoms with another medication or switching them from one medication to the other to try and hone in dosages, this and that. If we can focus on restoring that interplay between the rest, relax, regulate, and that stress stuck on system, that parasympathetic, that sympathetic, to allow a better functioning autonomic nervous system, well, that's a pretty darn good solution in itself. And that's what makes us unique. Our neurotonal-based approach, looking at this delicate system, has been vastly helpful in improving the quality of life, not just for the kids, not just for moms and dads, but for the family as a whole. The behaviors, the reports, the things that parents tell me of a subjective nature are important. That mom gut, that dad gut. You want your kiddo to be your kiddo. You don't want them to be a mindless zombie. So in taking into account all of those things that you can see, getting a good understanding of what the underlying condition of the system is, we can take your subjective reports, our data, turn them into a cohesive, planned out care plan specific for your kiddo, and set the wheels in motion of making this change. The coolest thing is that when we get to our first rescan, our second rescan, when we're looking at changes in objective data, the reports that we get are also changing too. So we're looking at things from both ends. We know that when the internal state of a system changes, the outward things that we see also change. If that internal part of the system is no longer repetitively stress stuck on, hamster on a wheel going round and round and round, if that body can take a break, can relax, you'll see things change. Kids start sleeping better. Kids change their appetite. The biggest thing that parents tell me when they're working with not just me, with other providers too, is that their providers want to know what the heck they started, what they're doing different, and how they can figure that out. And the main thing is here, it's evaluating their child's nervous system and allowing it to get out of that stress stuck on loop so that it can get a better understanding, better function, and a better perception of its environment. That reactivation of the parasympathetic system, that vagus nerve, that autonomic nervous system turns it into a calmer and a more regulated state. So if you're looking for drug-free, neuro-focused help for your kid, your teen, or moms, dads, yourself, check out our blog post from this week. It'll be linked in our bio. It talks about anxiety. It talks about root causes. It talks about dysautonomia. It talks about the vagus nerve. It talks about a whole bunch more too. Our goal is to provide hope, answers, and drug-free help to families that are in need. And if you're ready, shoot us a DM, give us a call to find out more about how neurologically focused chiropractic can help not only your kids, not only you, but your family. I'm here for y'all. I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to help out. I'll see you soon. Take care.